day and welcome to our online message for this week. My name is Deanne Carter and I serve as the pastor of Margarettsville and Lower Granville Baptist churches. Today we are looking at the passage of scripture from James 4:13 to 17. And I'm wondering if any of you have ever made plans and had them all go up in smoke. Something happened and the plans you made, the ones you'd counted on, well, they didn't happen. We've all been there, haven't we? We may even have put lots of time and effort and perhaps money into the plan. And then in an instant, the result we had wished for did not come to pass. There's a fictitious story, but it gets the point across I want to share today. A story of how one day there was a pastor who was out painting his fence. And as he was painting, he was meditating on this passage from the book of James and the point that life is so brief. It's just a vapor. And about that time, a man came along the road leading a horse. And the pastor looked up and said, "Where are you going with that horse?" And the man replied, "I'm going to sell it." To which the pastor said, "You ought to say, you're going to sell it if it be the Lord's will." "The Lord has nothing to do with it. I raised the horse to sell, and I'm going to sell it," the man said. Well, the pastor responded once again, "I'm telling you, life is short. You ought to say, if it be the Lord's will." The man, getting a little perturbed, says, "Look, I raised this horse to sell. I have an appointment with a potential buyer. The Lord's will doesn't have anything to do with it." And with that, he and his horse walked off. The pastor returned to painting his fence. About an hour and a half later, he looked up and he saw the man walking back towards him. His pants were gone. His boots were gone. He was trying to cover himself with his shirt tail. His face was cut and his hair was all messed up. The pastor asked, "What in the world happened to you?" The man responded, "Well, I stayed here and talked to you so long I was late for my appointment. I cut across a cornfield to save time. And the farmer who owns the field saw my horse, but he didn't see me. So he shot my horse. My horse fell on me and he kicked me in the eye. I couldn't get out from underneath him without pulling off my boots and my breeches. I got up and the farmer started shooting at me. And getting away, I caught myself in a barbed wire fence. That's what happened to me." The pastor asked, "Well, where are you going now?" To which the man replied, "Well, I'm going home if it be the Lord's will." Now, in previous weeks, we have been studying how we are to live as believers in the world, how we are called to submit ourselves to God and to strive to not let our selfish desires or anything in and of the world take priority over our relationship with God and our desire to serve Him. We're not to seek our will. We are to seek His will in all things. And in today's passage, we read that we're not to make plans without consulting God first. Oh dear, right? Have you ever done the opposite? Have you ever made the plans first and then asked God to bless them? Instead, what James is telling us is to go to God first and to pray for His will to be revealed. It's sad that we as individuals, we as church bodies, spend so little time in prayer and scripture seeking God's will. When important decisions need to be made, sometimes we'll discuss things for a long time. We'll form committees and groups and consult everyone. And then we'll come to a decision and we'll ask God to bless the decision. When in reality, what we should be doing is praying for His leading. We should be poring over his word, spending more time in prayer than in planning what we think is the best. Now, planning isn't wrong. We all make plans. We need to make plans in order to get places and do things. Think back, plans for your careers. If you studied at a college or university, you had to decide which one to choose and make plans to get there. If we married someone, who would our spouse be? Would we plan a family? Where would we go on holidays? Where and when would we retire? And how would I save for retirement? What would we do during our retirement? And on and on. We make plans every day. And as I've already said, making plans isn't wrong. It's not what James is saying, but he is saying there is a right way and a wrong way to make these plans. Let's look at the right way first. It seems that these businessmen that James is addressing here, they had planned the when, the where, the why, the how to carry on the business and to make money. But they had not consulted God in the process. James says to them, now listen, instead of boasting about what you will and will not do, you should say, if the Lord is willing, then we will live. We will do this or that. This was and is the way believers are to live and plan. When the Apostle Paul made plans, we see he put this into practice. In Acts 18:21, he said, I will come back to you again if God wills. And then in 1 Corinthians 4:19, he said, but I will come to you soon if the Lord is willing. Now, having said this, James was not referring to a phrase that we just tack on to our speech, something we literally always have to say as we plan. If it's the Lord's will, I'll go to town today. If it's the Lord's will, I'll save money for that new coat. If it's the Lord's will, I'll plan for this holiday. If it's the Lord's will, I'll go visit so-and-so, and on and on. Though that's a good idea to have in our head up here. But what he is saying is that as believers, everything we do should be centered on God's will. This should be our continuous attitude as we are submitted to him and as we live our lives for him. C.S. Lewis once said, you're never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. And this is true. However, let's remember to dream those dreams in agreement with God's purpose for our lives, in agreement with God's plans. If you recall the story of Abraham, you remember his life and how it is a witness to the power of obeying God's will. When he was called to leave his homeland and journey to an unknown land, Abraham, he obediently followed God's leading, despite the uncertainties and the challenges he faced along the way. And through Abraham's obedience, God established a covenant with him, promising to bless him and to make his descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Oh, there were times that Abraham questioned God, what he was going to do and when he was going to do it. There were times he even tried to help God make his promises come true. But what he learned was that he needed to submit completely to God and trust him to be faithful. Hudson Taylor is quoted as saying, God's will done in God's way will never lack God's supply. And Abraham found that out. Have you? When we seek God's will, we can rest assured that he will provide everything we need to fulfill his purposes in his perfect time. Everything we need. Elizabeth Elliot summarized the essence of obeying God's will when she said, "The will of God is not something you add to your life. It's a course you choose." Remember Saul of Tarsus? Remember how he was later known as the Apostle Paul? When he experienced a radical transformation and he went on to obey God's will for his life? Initially, he persecuted Christians until he encountered the risen Christ on the road to Damascus. He was blinded and he was confronted with his wrongdoing. And through Aeneas, God revealed his will for Paul's life. He commissioned him to be a witness for Christ to the Jews and the Gentiles. And look what Paul's obedience resulted in. Many came to know the Lord. And we have much of the scriptures written by his hand. Have you committed yourself to God and his will for your life? I know you have at some point in the past, because when you were baptized, you would have done this. And you have seen him at work in you over the years. Do you still see him working? Do you still commit yourself to his will in your life? Maybe it's a daily commitment. I mean, it is a daily commitment. It is an event by event commitment, not a once in a lifetime commitment when we seek the Lord's will. May we seek his will in all things. May we commit ourselves to the Lord and ask him to direct our path. This is the way for us to walk into tomorrow, into this afternoon. Asking God to go before us, to lead us and direct us. Or we can choose another way. We can choose to ignore God's will and disobey. We can set goals without consulting him. We can work hard to reach them and realize that we do not have the ultimate control until something happens and the dreams go out the window. The plans we made are crushed. None of us know what will happen tomorrow. Oh, we are to plan ahead, but we are also to hold those plans loosely and to put God's desire at the center of our planning. Acknowledging that he might have other plans. He might completely turn us around in a different direction. Life is uncertain. We have no guarantee of tomorrow, whether there will even be a tomorrow, or what will happen. Life is frail. James says, "You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." We know that's true. We can quickly succumb to illness, sickness, accidents, showing us just how fragile life really is. It's foolish to think that we have the strength within ourselves to make our plans happen. And James even tells us that to think this way is sin. Verse 16, all such boasting is evil. It's arrogant. Remember the story of the rich fool in the Gospel of Luke? Jesus tells a parable of a wealthy man who accumulated many possessions, and he was pleased with his wealth, and he made plans. He was going to build bigger barns to store his wealth, declaring, "You have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." However, God rebuked him, saying, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" The rich man's fatal mistake was ignoring God's will in his pursuit of worldly success, and he had to face the consequences. Instead of pridefully boasting about our plans, May we humbly trust in God and seek Him each step of the way. Corrie ten Boom put it beautifully when she said, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God." Obedience to God's will may lead us into places we never would have imagined, but we can trust in His unfailing guidance and provision every step of the way. Now, as we reflect on this passage today, may we take it in. May we follow its wisdom. Let's acknowledge the shortness of life, the uncertainty of tomorrow. Let's recognize that our existence on earth is but a fleeting mist. So may we have the spirit of humility. May we seek God's will and surrender our plans to the sovereign will of God. Instead of boasting in our own strength and our own wisdom, what we plan, let's commit our ways to the Lord. Let's trust in His providence and His guidance as we go forward. Thank you for joining with me today, and I pray this message has been a blessing to you. May you seek God and His will today and tomorrow and all the tomorrows of your life. God bless you. See you next week.